Every morning before I even get out of bed, two devices on my wrists have already been working all night, analysing the tiny gaps between my heartbeats, measuring something called heart rate variability, or HRV. This one, my Garmin, I'm not affiliated to it, tells me one number. This other one, I'm also not affiliated to it, is my Whoop, tells me another number. They both claim to measure the same thing, and yet they often disagree. So which one is right? What are they actually measuring? And why does a neurosurgeon who looks after patients with traumatic brain injuries care so much about it? Today I'm going to take you from the intensive care unit to my morning runs, from what HRV means for your recovery after exercise, to how I use it in my clinical practice to help predict which of my patients on the unit might be about to get worse. If you find this useful, subscribing really does help. It means more people get to see videos like this. Thank you. Let's start with the basics. Most people think of their heart rate as a single number. Let's say 60 beats per minute. That sounds steady, 1 beat every second. But your heart doesn't actually beat like a metronome. One interval might be 0.95 seconds. The next one 1.05 seconds. Then 0.99 seconds, and so on and so forth. Now, those differences, measured in milliseconds, are your heart rate variability. HRV is the variation in the time intervals between successive heartbeats. It's measured from one heartbeat on the ECG to the next. The ECG is the electrocardiogram. Now, in the old days, we used to use a caliper to measure those intervals. Nowadays, these are estimated by optical sensors in these devices. Now, here's the key insight. This variability isn't a noise, it's not an error, it's a feature. It reflects how well your autonomic nervous system, that part of your body, your nervous system that runs on autopilot, is regulating your body in real time. Your autonomic nervous system has two branches. The sympathetic branch, your accelerator, your fight or flight system, and the parasympathetic branch, your brake, your rest and digest system. A healthy autonomic nervous system is constantly adjusting the balance between these two, bit by bit, moment to moment, in response to everything from your breathing pattern to your posture, to whether you're digesting a meal or running from a threat. When this system is working well, you get high variability. Lots of subtle bit-to-bit adjustments. When the system is under stress, chronically fatigued, or diseased, it loses that flexibility. The intervals become more rigid, more uniform. Variability drops. And that's a fundamental principle. A higher HRV generally reflects a more adaptable, resilient autonomic nervous system. A lower HRV, on the other side, suggests a system under strain. Now, I find the best way to explain HRV is through an analogy I use with my patients and their families. And it comes from one of my other passions, cars. Now, think of your autonomic nervous system as a car. HRV is not simply how fast the engine can go. It's more like the responsiveness of the entire drivetrain, the accelerator, the brake, the gearbox, and the suspension, all working together. A high-performance car doesn't just produce raw power, it adjusts rapidly and smoothly to the road. You hit a bend, the suspension absorbs it. The brakes modulate, the gearbox drops a gear, the throttle responds instantly. The car adapts in real time to what the road demands. And that is what a well-regulated autonomic nervous system does. It accelerates when you're challenged, when you stand up suddenly, when you start sprinting, when you're under acute stress. And it decelerates smoothly when safety returns. It shifts gears constantly, seamlessly, without you even noticing. Now contrast that with the car stuck in one gear. Either it's over-revving constantly, the engine screaming at 6,000 RPMs or on a straight road, or it's the other way around, it's sluggish, unable to respond when you put your foot down. That is a system with poor variability. It cannot adapt. It cannot modulate. Whether the road is straight or twisting, uphill or downhill, the response is the same. And that, in essence, is what we're measuring with HRV. Not the speed itself, not the power, it's adaptability. The ability to respond to what life throws at you and recover quickly when the challenge passes. Now it's time to take you to the world of intensive care unit, where some of my patients often go after a severe traumatic brain injury or after a long and complex operation on the brain. Now, the intensive care unit, or ICU, is a place where we monitor our patients continuously. Blood pressure, heart rate, oxygen saturation with a pulse oximeter, intracranial pressure, cerebral perfusion pressure. These are all parameters we use to monitor how the patient is behaving and to predict whether it's going in one direction or the other. So whether the patient is getting better or worse. One of the most underutilized tools available to us is HRV analysis. And in my practice, it's something my neurointensivist colleagues often pay close attention to. The same principle we talked about earlier apply. A healthy autonomic nervous system produces variability. A system in crisis loses it. And in critically ill patients, that loss of variability can be an early warning sign, sometimes hours before conventional vital signs change. Let me give you a couple of real clinical scenarios where HRV has genuinely influenced my thinking. A patient recovering well after brain surgery. Vital signs all looking normal, but his HRV quietly starts to drop. That failing variability is his autonomic nervous system telling us something is brewing before any thermometer or blood test picks it up. Sure enough, 6 hours later, he spikes a temperature. He's developing sepsis, an overwhelming infection. But because we spotted the HRV decline early, we'd already started antibiotic treatment through a drip. We were ahead of the game. Then take the young cyclist with a severe head injury, unconscious on a ventilator. Her brainstem, the part of the brain that controls the autonomic nervous system, has been damaged. Maybe irreversibly, maybe irreversibly, we don't know. But that damage shows up as profoundly suppressed HRV. Over 5 days, we watch it gradually recover. And that recovery mirrors her clinical improvement. HRV is giving us a live, continuous readout of how well her brain is healing. Something a scan taken at one moment in time simply cannot do. Now let's talk about what these two devices are actually doing differently. Because if you wear a Garmin and a Whoop, you will notice that they give you different numbers. And that can be confusing. Now, both devices use the same core metric. It's called RMSST, the root mean square of successive differences between heartbeats. There's a particular formula, but essentially this is a measure that primarily reflects parasympathetic vagal activity. It's the metric that the research community has converged on as the most reliable short-term measure of autonomic regulation. Now, this formula takes successive intervals between heartbeats on an ECG and calculates the difference between each pair. It squares those differences, takes the mean, then the square root. In plain terms, it captures how much each beat-to-beat interval changes from the one before it. Now, where Garmin and Whoop differ, and you might find other devices giving you sort of a slightly different readings, is when and how they sample this data. Garmin calculates HRV as an average of RMSSD readings across your entire night's sleep. It captures data throughout all sleep stages and gives you a nightly average. Whoop historically focused its RMSSD measurement specifically during your deepest phase of slow wave sleep. Now, regardless of which one you go for, the practical result is that Whoop tends to report higher absolute numbers than Garmin for the same person on the same night. So they're essentially sampling from different windows of your sleep architecture and applying different algorithms. And this brings me to something critical that I want you to remember. The single most common mistake people make with HRV is obsessing over the number itself. My HRV is 45, is that good? My friend's HRV is 80 and mine is 35. Am I unhealthy? Now, these questions miss the point entirely. HRV is profoundly individual. It's influenced by age. It naturally declines as we get older. It's influenced by sex, by genetics, fitness level, body composition, medication. A healthy 25-year-old endurance athlete might have a resting HRV of 90 or above. A healthy 55-year-old might sit at 30 and be in excellent autonomic health for their age. The research is clear on this. There have been large-scale studies looking at millions of individuals using a technique called photoplethysmography. It's a simple, non-invasive optical technique which detects blood volume changes in the microvascular tissue bed beneath the skin. And this analysis shows enormous inter-individual variation, so variation between individuals. So comparing your number to someone else's is meaningless. What matters is your trend over time, your personal baseline, and how your HRV moves relative to that baseline across weeks and months. A progressive downward trend in your HRV, even if the absolute number would look normal to someone else, can indicate chronic stress accumulation or overtraining or being ill or inadequate recovery. A rising trend, on the other hand, even from a low starting point, suggests improving autonomic regulation, a better recovery, a good fitness adaptation. So when I look at my Garmin or my Whoop each morning, I'm not asking what's the number, I'm asking what's the direction. Is my 7-day average higher or lower than my 30-day average? Am I trending up, down, or am I stable? That's the information that actually drives my decisions, whether to push hard on a training run or to take it easy. Now, let me address something that drives a lot of people crazy, myself included. You wake up after what feels like a brilliant night's sleep. You feel fresh, energetic, ready to go. You check your watch and your HRV is in the red. Recovery score is terrible. The algorithm is telling you to take a rest day. So what do? This is what I call the morning paradox. And it happens more often than people realize. The research actually helps explain why. Your subjective sense of recovery involves much more than just autonomic nervous system state. It includes psychological readiness, your motivation, your mood, your expectations. You might feel great because you slept long, had vivid dreams, woke up naturally, and now you're excited about the day ahead. Those are real signals, but they are cortical. They're coming from the upper part of the brain. They are that part of the brain that is responsible for your consciousness. They are conscious signals. Now, HRV, on the other hand, is measuring something beneath your awareness, the autonomic regulation that happened whilst you were asleep. And there are situations where your autonomic system is still processing a stressor that your conscious mind has already moved past. Perhaps you had a heavy training session 2 days ago and the parasympathetic rebound is still incomplete. Maybe you had alcohol the night before and you had a fragmented deep sleep, even when the total sleep duration looks fine. Perhaps your body is fighting a subclinical infection that you can't yet feel. So what do I personally do in this situation? I take a middle path. I listen to both signals. If I feel genuinely excellent and my HRV is low, I'll train. But I'll modify. I might shorten the session, reduce the intensity, or swap intervals for a steady state run. I use the HRV data to insert a note of caution into what my subjective feeling is telling me. What I don't do is blindly obey the algorithm, and I don't ignore it either. The data exists to give you an additional signal, one that your conscious awareness can't access. So treat it as information, not an instruction. Over time, you'll learn your own patterns. You'll recognize when a low HRV morning truly does predict a bad session, and when it doesn't. Let me bring it all together. Whether we're talking about a runner checking their watch or a neurosurgeon watching a monitor on the ICU, we're looking at the same thing. The HRV is a window into the body's ability to adapt. The large-scale data tells a compelling story. Higher HRV tracks with better cardiovascular fitness, lower inflammation burden, better cognitive function, and in populations ranging from age 10 to 99, those who maintain or regain their HRV tend to have longer, healthier lives. But the evidence is largely associative, not causal. So there is a correlation, not causation. HRV is a marker. It reflects the state of your autonomic regulation. Improving the things that matter, sleep, fitness, stress management, nutrition, will often improve your HRV as a consequence. But chasing the number itself misses entirely the point. Think of your HRV as a dashboard light. A warning light does not cause the engine problem. Covering it up doesn't fix anything, but paying attention to it and understanding what's telling you can keep you on the road. Heart rate variability is a single physiological signal that connects my work as a neurosurgeon to my life as a runner. Now, my 3 take-home messages. First, HRV measures adaptability, not fitness. Think of the car analogy. It's the responsiveness of the whole system, not just the engine. Second, your number is your number. Don't compare it to anyone else's. Watch your trends. That's where the real information lives. And third, when your body tells you one thing and your device tells you another, listen to both. Neither has the whole picture. Together, they get closer to the truth. If you found this helpful, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. I'm going to be doing more videos on the intersection of neuroscience and everyday health. Because in my experience, the same physiology that keeps my patients in critical conditions alive is the physiology that helps me run faster, recover better, and live longer. See you next time.